Hi everyone, it's Carissa, and today I want to show you how to graft live stitches together in stockinette stitch. For example, on the toe of a cuff down sock. So we have live stitches on this side of the fabric and live stitches on this side of the fabric, and we want to graft them together along the tip of the toe so that it is an invisible seam. Let's look at how to do that. So I have the toe of a little sock here that I am ready to graft the top and bottom stitches together. And first I need to cut my tail of yarn. Now you need at least 4 times the width of your grafted seam in order to do this. So there is 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you're going to want to leave yourself at least a little bit of a tail to weave in afterward. I like to give myself a little extra just to be safe. And I'm going to cut my yarn and thread this tail onto my tapestry needle. Now I have all of my live stitches here in between my 2 knitting needles, and my yarn is coming out of the last stitch on the back needle there. So I am going to start by going into the first stitch on the front needle, and I'm going to go into that stitch as if to purl. So I'm inserting my tapestry needle through that first stitch from right to left as if to purl, and I'm going to pull that yarn all the way through. But I am not going to drop that stitch off the needle just yet. Now I'm going to come to the back needle here. I'm going to go through that first stitch as if to purl, so from right to left, and I'm going to pull that yarn all the way through, and I'm going to drop that stitch off that needle. We are done with that stitch. So drop that off. So I went through that stitch as if to purl and dropped it off the needle. Now I'm going to go through the next stitch on the back needle as if to knit. So from left to right through that stitch, and pull that through and leave that stitch on the back needle. Now I'm going to come back to the front needle here. I'm going to go through the first stitch as if to knit and drop it off the needle and pull that all the way through. Then I'm going to go through the second stitch as if to purl, but leave it on the needle. And now I'm just going to alternate those steps. So on the back needle, I'll go through as if to purl and drop that stitch off. Then go through the next stitch as if to knit and leave it on the needle. Then on the front needle, go through the next stitch as if to knit and drop it off the needle. Then the next stitch as if to purl and keep it on the needle. And you can do this, you can combine motions in this as well. So I go through my next stitch as if to purl, next stitch on the back needle, as if to purl and drop it off. But before I pull the needle all the way through this, I'm going to go ahead and go through the next stitch on the back needle as if to knit and leave that on the knitting needle. So I'm pulling my yarn through both of those stitches at the same time to save a little bit of motion. And then on the front needle, I'm going to go into the next stitch as if to knit and drop it off. And before pulling my tapestry needle through that stitch, I'm turning it and going through the next stitch as if to purl, but leave it on the knitting needle. And as I am working, you can see I am not being careful about these big loops at all. I'm going to clean that up afterward, so don't worry about it. That is one of the reasons why I like to leave myself a little extra when I cut the tail, because that means that I can be a little sloppy with it and then go back and pull out that slack later. Now, I've just gone through the front needle stitch as if to purl and left it on. So I'm going to go to the back needle, go through as if to purl, take it off, and through the next stitch as if to knit, but leave it on. And pull that yarn through. On the front needle, knit off, purl on. Back needle, purl off, knit on. I'm going to repeat these steps until I get to my very last stitch. Purl off, knit on, knit off, purl on, purl off, knit on, knit off, purl on. And now I only have one stitch left on each needle, so when I go through this stitch as if to purl and I drop it off, now there's no other stitch to go through as if to knit, so I am done with the back needle. Likewise, when I go through this stitch as if to knit and I drop it off, now I have no more stitches, so I simply pull the thread through that last stitch. And I am done with my knitting needles. Now, those stitches look very loose and sloppy, so what I like to do is use my tapestry needle, and I come back to the beginning, and I find that first loop of the graft, and I give that a little bit of a tug and tighten it up. And as I pull, you can see which strand that's attached to, that this one got tightened as well. So as I pull on this loop, I'm going to notice what loop comes next, and I'll pull on that one next. And then the next loop that's attached to is right there. So I'll pull on that until this loop is snug. And then find the next leg. And so I'm going through that row of grafted stitches, and I'm simply pulling on each leg of each stitch until it tightens and matches the gauge of the fabric surrounding it. Some people are very meticulous and pull the yarn just so as they're doing the graft so that their gauge matches. I like to just get the grafting done and then come back later and fix the gauge. But you do you. Trying to find where that is connected. Okay, it's connected to that strand right there. So that's the next one I need to pull. And then I think, yep, that's the end of it. So now if I look at my graft, it's still a little bit loose, so I might want to go through again and tug at those stitches and tighten them each up a little bit. There we go. And now our toe is completely grafted. You can't even tell which row is our graft and which rows were actually knitted instead of sewn. I'm going to take the tail of my yarn and poke it through the fabric there at the end of the toe to the inside of my sock, and then I'll turn my sock inside out and weave in that end. But there we go. There's our grafted toe. Perfect. Thanks for watching.